Now, the Libyan Football Federation has said that it will not condone any excuses from the Nigeria Football Federation to boycott the second leg of the Group D 2025 African Cup of Nations qualifier tie against the Super Eagles. Now, this is after the Super Eagles and its officials departed Libya after being stranded at Al Abak Airport for over 16 hours following an unexpected diversion on Sunday, prompting Nigeria to pull out of the match. Minister of Sport Development, Senator John Owan Enoh, joins us now to discuss the botched Super Eagles Libya AFCON qualifiers and what steps Nigeria is taking to seek remedy for the team. Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. Welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon and thank you.
All right, let's get straight to it. Of course, we've been following this story blow by blow as it developed. Where do things currently stand? Because we understand that the last position was that Nigeria has made a firm decision not to proceed with this match. What are all of the modalities around that?
Well, I mean, as you are aware, and as every Nigerian is aware, the senior national team was received back, to Nigeria yesterday. So I mean, it's that's where we are, and ahead of their return, indicated early yesterday that in the course of the conversations between me and the president of Libyan Football Federation, while they were still holed up in Libya, I insisted that a strong worded petition, and protest letter had to be made and submitted to CAF, before their return. So that is what has been done. In terms of the state of things where we are, before the close of work, I think, or by evening of yesterday, CAF had issued a statement. That statement has been described variously as having come out, late, but all the same, that statement has been issued, decrying and saying it was unacceptable, the kind of treatment that was meted to the Nigerian team, and indicating the fact that it's referred the matter to its disciplinary committee to further investigate and know, to be sure that people are held accountable, whoever was responsible. Ahead of this program this afternoon, I've just read somewhere, I'm yet to confirm, about the fact of CAF delisting the match, Libyan-Nigerian match, and all of that. So the matters are still playing out. Nigeria, I mean, this matter is not an internal matter. It's a matter that involves Nigeria and CAF, the Confederation of African Football. They have the responsibility to run football in Africa. So whatever else is going to come out of this is going to be driven and determined by what CAF does. But as a country and as a ministry and as NFF, I think that what it is that we're going to, keep our watchful eyes on events and developments, concerning this matter.
And in the event that CAF does decide to delist the match, Senator, what are the implications of that, and what will become of the diplomatic relations between the two countries? Is this something that will escalate concerning Libya and Nigeria diplomatically?
Okay, there are two things here. The first is that you're talking about, diplomatic relations between Nigeria and Israel. That is, up to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to deal with. And that ministry is currently dealing with it. I mean, you would have read somewhere that the ambassador, to Libya, may have been summoned at some point yesterday. So those are issues of diplomacy and will be discussed at that level. In terms of what the implications would be if it is confirmed that CAF has delisted the Libyan-Nigerian match, I mean, we would need to be able to now find out what are the details of that. I mean, if that is supposed to suggest that that match is going to be, rescheduled for a later date, as a country, and as a ministry, we're going to be interested in, what will be the contents of all of that. If that match is going to be rescheduled, where will it be rescheduled? Is it going to be still in Libya or in some other neutral ground? As a country, I believe that we'll be asking and pushing for the latter, having to have that match in a neutral ground. And I think that, beyond that, we'll also be interested in how what are the other details of what decisions that CAF has taken. I know, for example, that the other details may not be as quickly because there's going to be an investigation. Because one of the things that as a country we've insisted since yesterday is the fact that there must be consequences. We will not think that the kind of gory incident and situation that was faced by our senior national team is just going to get dealt with and solved by the fact of saying that match should now get replayed, if it's scheduled for somewhere else. We think that we're going to be interested in what CAF is going to do further to, the Libyan Football Federation. Just because it is, what CAF does and how it handles this is going to have quite some very serious implications in terms of whatever precedents that may be set or not, and how much it's going to be a disincentive to any other federation that may decide to do this. I think that African football can appropriately be said to be on trial at this point. And I think that what CAF does, CAF has a big responsibility to restore back order and responsibility in terms of the conduct of football in Africa.
Sir, I'm so glad you're talking about consequences, because those are some of the conversations that are happening in the public space. You look at South African football fans, and some of them were reveling in this moment because they're saying that, well, something similar happened to Bafana Bafana, the South African football team, in June of this year when they landed in Port Harcourt, and there were some issues before they could be conveyed to Uyo. The Libyans are also said to be saying that, well, their team was also ill-treated, similar circumstances, landing in Port Harcourt and then, being delayed and having, there's a lot of blame game happening here. So some are saying, well, it was Nigeria's turn to receive the treatment that they offer to others. Can you clarify some of these allegations that are being made with regards to instances concerning other football teams that have been hosted here in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you. Let me use this very question and this opportunity to say a few things very quickly. And what are those things? I think that as a country, when we, going through what we've gone through, in the last, 48 hours, or 24 up to yesterday night when our team came back, I believe that if there is one issue that should unite this country, it is this particular issue, without prejudice to whatever biases or sentiments anybody has. I say this because I find out that as Nigerians, there are some people that are promoting the kind of narrative you've tried to put forth. And I think that is unfortunate. It's important for us to be able to be abreast properly with the facts and with the situation and how dissimilar these matters are. In a conversation I had yesterday with the CAF president, I called attention to a similar situation that, that came up. You talked about it in June involving South Africa. And I need to say this. Because the senior team national matches take place in the country in Uyo, each time any of those matches is going to take place, the NFF has always advised the country that is coming for that match that, look, this match is taking place in this venue in Uyo. There is an airport. Therefore, fly to Uyo. And each of those times, the NFF has worked with NCAA and the Ministry of Aviation to make sure that Uyo Airport is cleared for that kind of activity, landing and all of that. In the case of South Africa was themselves, they elected and preferred to land in Port Harcourt. The same thing with the Libyan team. The Libyan team was even worse off. But before I come to the Libyan team, it's important to understand this, that once South Africa landed in Port Harcourt, the NFF and the Nigerian delegation were on ground to provide whatever logistics support they needed to provide for them to move to Uyo. I recall, for example, the NFF president telling me that the Secretary General of CAF was on him back to back. He didn't allow him rest. Every little complaint was attended to, his attention was called to, and it was dealt with. In terms of the Libyan case, the Libyan national team, by the time they were leaving Libya for Nigeria, First, they left ahead of schedule. They informed nobody. It was after they were airborne that NFF's attention was called to the fact that they were airborne and the fact that they were no longer landing in Uyo, they were landing in Port Harcourt. In spite of that, NFF made frantic efforts to be able to provide the logistics support they needed on landing in Port Harcourt. When they landed in Port Harcourt, NFF informed the delegation that they have cleared Uyo Airport for them to take off from Port Harcourt and land in Uyo. And the Libyan delegation told them that the arrangement they had with whoever brought them was to stop in Port Harcourt and they were going to go by road. NFF had to advise them that it was late, they should wait and go by road the next day. They insisted they would go by road that night. NFF provided transportation and security. And they didn't want to use the transportation organized by the NFF, but the security was there available for them. They went to Uyo. They were accommodated in a five-star hotel. They were supposed to train for just one moment, but NFF allowed them to train in the field for about twice. Even after they marched, when they said they were going to return on Sunday, NFF allowed them to access to the training pitch on Saturday before they left on Sunday. Everything was provided and available. I mean, these two incidents cannot be compared to what happened to them in Libya. In Libya, they had agreed they were going to fly to Benghazi. They had started a descent. I'm sure Nigerians have seen the video from the pilot. They had started a descent, and they got a call from, according to them, from high authorities that they couldn't land. They got it diverted. Without regard to the fact of whether they had enough fuel or not to fly to an airport that was about 300 kilometers away. They had no contact with the Libyan Federation for as long as that. I challenged CAF yesterday that for 15 hours, CAF hasn't been able to establish direct communication with the Libyan Football Federation. In the case of the instances of South Africa and Libya, nothing compared ever took place. Nigeria is always available and disposed to be a good host. We believe that having to, the match is played and won in the field of play and not using underhand tactics here and there to try to cause what happened in Libya that our team was subjected to. So it's important for Nigerians to realize that when we have a common problem like this facing Nigeria, we all should unite as a people. We shouldn't be those promoting a narrative that is wrong, that is not correct, and selling it out in the public space. Now, I have read the statement from the Libyan Football Federation, and that is neither here nor there. And I'm glad that when I spoke to the NFF Secretary General, who himself was the one corresponding with the Secretary General of the Libyan Football Federation, says he has the contents of all the phone calls, all the chats, all the discussions between him and the Libyan Secretary General, Football Federation Secretary General. And all of these are available, and I'm glad that there's going to be an investigation. If any of these countries was so subjected, do they have any protest? Do they have any complaint to CAF as to their maltreatment? I don't think this is correct, and I think that we all need to understand and separate these. There is nothing that happened to the Libyan Football Federation. When they came to Nigeria, they came with, they had a mission, and they created problems for themselves. And the NFF was on ground. Every problem they created, they were available to solve for them. This is not what happened when Libya. And I think that it's important that we understand this so.
Well, Senator, very understandable. Thank you for explaining that. But I'm sure that you do understand where this narrative is coming from. When trying to dissect the situation or even make sense of the situation, one has to consider motive, right? So the question is, what is the motivation of the Libyans to do such to the Nigerian team, knowing how much of a sabotage this would be? Is their motivation that they're trying to do a tit for tat, which you're saying is obviously not the case? Is their motivation that they may be racist? Is their motivation that they want the Super Eagles to lose and they're willing to use any amount of underhanded tactics to achieve that? All three are quite severe, but the third one is even more severe because it's so blatant. What kind of message could they really have been trying to send by doing something so drastic that would eventually be heard by the world? What could be the motivation?
Well, for me, it could not have been tit for tat because the Libyan delegation that came to Nigeria is fully aware that they were not subjected to any of such things. They created their own problems, I mean, they may sell out a different narrative now, but they cannot lie to themselves. So it cannot be tit for tat. I mean, the second aspect is, I mean, I think that, whether they are racist or, I mean, it's not a subject that I like to delve into. I think that the more likely is the fact of getting the Nigerian team to be sufficiently psychologically, traumatized in such a manner that by the time they file out to play against them, they become, they can easily win. I think that, I mean, it's as simplistic as that. I mean, but I think that this may have been something that was taken too far. It may be a combination of several other factors, but the one that is the most obvious and the one I can speak about is the third, of the possibilities. And that possibility is that because I think that if you find out that by the time the Nigerian team and delegation was set to leave and depart Libya back to Nigeria, it didn't come as easily, because they still expected that in spite of what they have subjected the team to, the team would still be available, for them, to play against. So, I mean, basically that's what it is. And that's what I can speak to, yeah.
All right, you said something very profound when we began this interview.
And like you said, that would be most unfortunate, yeah. That would be most unfortunate. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely, yes, sir. So when we started this interview, you said something quite profound, which was along the lines that African football is on trial. Now we look at what has transpired in Libya. I believe the Nigerian team is not the only team that has experienced something of this nature in Libya. I believe Cameroon has also gone through something similar. We're not entirely sure about the details around it. However, there's a big conversation about CAF's ability or inability to actually be able to punish any offenders or, for a real, authentic disciplinary process to be able to go through. Are you confident that CAF is going to be able to handle the situation? And what are some of the consequences? Because, of course, we're hearing this rhetoric from the Nigerian government saying there must be consequences. Somebody must be punished. What type of consequences are you looking for?
Well, I mean, it's very immediately. I mean, I'm not quite familiar with what the particular or specific statutes of CAF, would seem to be in how to deal with matters like this. I'm also not very familiar with whether, the state of the present statutes of CAF on these kinds of matters, it's enough, has enough allowance, has enough provision to be able to deal with this kind of situation. Because I'm also not too aware whether in drawing up those statutes, some years back, it was ever imagined that it could get to what it got to, in terms of what the Libyan Football Federation subjected to the Nigerian team to. But whatever it is, I think that certain times when situations come up in the manner that they've come up, I mean, it provides an opportunity for, whatever laws or statutes to be a bit more progressive. I believe, for example, that you may have mentioned the fact that it's not the first time you mentioned the Cameroon situation, mentioned some other situations in the past. I'm yet to know whether there is any of these kinds of situations that compares to what, confronted, the Nigerian team in Libya. I mean, a team arrives at an airport, which it was diverted to by the authorities of Libya at about 8 p.m. and gets no attention till about 15, 16 hours later, I mean, in a kind of hostage situation for a game of football. I think that, I mean, so as a people, I mean, and as a ministry, and I think as NFF and as a country, I think that we're going to be quite interested and very keen, to be able to, we are not going to dictate to CAF what kinds of measures, what kinds of consequences, because whatever CAF is going to do is going to be dictated or driven by their statutes. But what we hope, we expect is that CAF is going to be sufficiently bothered, sufficiently concerned about what has happened. CAF is going to be very worried about, the implications of allowing this to continue to go ahead, to the extent that CAF itself would not need any advice or suggestions by anybody or by the country Nigeria for what it needs to do. my hope is that CAF is going to do what is going to, put a stop to these kinds of rogue behavior. I call it rogue behavior, to these kinds of rogue behavior and all of that. So we are as a people, as a country, we're part of CAF. And we are a responsible, federation that is part of CAF and part of FIFA. So we will not seek to take their functions or their job. We're going to wait for them to do their functions and their job. When they take whatever decisions that they take, then we'll be able to determine for ourselves whether that is sufficient or not, and whatever else that we need to do as a country.
Rogue behavior indeed. Well, we wish the best for the Super Eagles and hope that justice is meted out in an appropriate way. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Minister of Sports, Senator John Owan Enoh.